times in the past there's been a history of distrust and whatever else we might call it regarding the county commissioners and the Board of Education. At least we're assigned with seeking to bring reconciliation and cooperation. And let me just remind, and I think I can speak for the co-chair, other co-chair too, we both request that we never lose sight of what our goal is here. So that's where we want to begin here at this point. Let me just read the statute, and there may be differing interpretations, but when we first met, at least I thought we all understood what we were going to be doing primarily here. But this is what it says. On or before August the 1st, 2014, the Union County Board of Commissioners and the Union County Board of Education shall jointly establish a working group to develop a multi-year plan to address existing and ongoing capital needs of the Union County Board of Education. The working group shall consist of up to 14 people, half appointed by each board. The work group shall complete its work and report to the Union County Board of Commissioners and the Union County Board of Education on or before June the 30th. So that's what we said, and we would be doing to establish the ongoing, existing and ongoing capital needs of the school board, right?
Now say that again, because you said we were going to establish the needs.
It says we were, okay, let me read it again. On or before August the 1st, 2014, the Union County Board of Commissioners and the Union County Board of Education shall jointly establish a working group to develop a multi-year plan to address existing and ongoing capital needs of the Union County Board of Education. The working group shall consist of...
Okay, a multi-year plan to address needs. I'm writing that down, so I will keep my focus on that. Okay.
Address existing and ongoing capital needs.
Right.
Of the Union County Board of Education. And I guess that's what I was saying, is that I think that these are the needs of the Board of Education.
I think the needs have been presented. I think it's up to us to figure out a way to deal with it. And back to Amy's point, if there are things that we need as a working group to say, we can afford to do X moving forward at this point, and if there are bond items we need to push to 2018, I think financially that's well within our purview. I think that's why we're here, is to figure out how to eat this elephant one bite at a time, if you will. I mean, that was my interpretation of what the statute was and what our charge is.
Is the further discussion on what we're charted to do here, commissioned to do?
I would just ask that we redirect our attention to our agenda and establish where we are in the agenda, because I think we are at the agenda at 5, and if you would, run the latitude to say it's got kind of 3 parts to it. We've had discussion regarding the CCEP, so at B, behind the comma, funding options, that's where we are right now.
Do we understand this to be true, that Dr. Webb has brought to us on behalf of the Union County Board of Education the capital needs for Union County Public Schools?
We have not put together a presentation on funding options to be presented tonight. Okay. We had anticipated that after the discussion tonight, our next meeting would be focused on that, and we would lay out all the funding options that are available, and a lot of it will resemble the discussion we had back in January. I think we laid out a lot of that as well.
And what Amy and I had discussed was that if we had time to go ahead and begin some of these discussions about the funding, and that's why item 5 was on the agenda. So we didn't mean to throw a curve.
Yeah, was that 5 and 6 would kind of merge together, and then we would do a separate focused discussion about funding. Now that we have more specific data, more specific plans, we can talk about it in the real context as opposed to the hypothetical. Yes.
Because I think, and I agree with you, but I think out of courtesy of the entire group, I think that we've heard a lot of what for CCEP, we have a better understanding. Now we need to go back and digest that and look at options that, we've heard a lot of what your anticipation is. Let's see how we can work together. And let us come back next time with a presentation that gives us better insight into how we can do that. I think to hash it out tonight we might make some knee-jerk decisions, that we can come back better prepared to address that, because, you know, we've heard what your basic is. Yes, sir.
Well, can we also, I apologize, you want to go ahead?
If I could be recognized by the chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank
I
you.
didn't see you, Robert, I saw.
And I definitely appreciate us moving forward, allowing the staff to prepare a presentation, but keep in mind it's options. That's where we are right now, I think, is looking at what our options are. You know, we did a presentation, that presentation outlined several options for funding. So now what I see us going is looking at realized options that we can use based on what we have here, because this is the document we're working from. So we, again, I'm repeating myself, but we need to lay options down on this document, and not so much another presentation about what those options are.
And I think to that point, that's, exactly, I think that's great, and I think maybe now would be appropriate if we had some questions, don't need the answers or discussions, but maybe if we ask some questions now that Jeff might be prepared for next time, if, you know, do you think that that would be appropriate? Because I know I've got several questions in evaluating when we come back together next time. Okay, we've got the plan, we've got some numbers. Now, as we evaluate as a working group what our options are, you know, I'm gonna need some answers when we get back together.
I'm just wondering if this would work, because has everybody got some questions that they'd like to ask Jeff, or would it possibly be where we could send him questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Something like that.
think we,
For
yeah.
the next meeting, Jeff, that you could have an answer for us.
Can I just ask one point of clarification?
Please.
My assumption is, in reading the language in the multi-year plan and the language in the legislation, is that there's funding options, and then part of the funding plan is moving projects up in, you know, up, down, and out.
Right.
And I think that part of the discussion in our next meeting should focus on, I don't think it's a given that all of these projects get recommended. And I think that the school board and the staff did exactly what they're supposed to do in providing us the list of their recommendation. But then this committee, I believe, it's part of the charge, is to evaluate that and move those around if we see fit in the funding discussion. So I think that part of that funding discussion is how you fit it into funding availability and impact, and that may or may not be all the projects. It may or may not be on the same time frame. And I think that to divorce the project, the ability to play with the composition of the request or the recommendation of the Board of County Commissioners, I think you start narrowing the box real fast on your funding options if the list is the only thing we're allowed to talk about in total. So I think that part of that discussion, and I'm not suggesting that I do that, I'm suggesting the group talk about it. I think that part of that discussion, it's a twofold. It's the funding options that are available, realistically available, and what of these projects can be fit within those parameters. And everybody's gonna have a different take on it. I think I could absolutely see folks taking the perspective of the value and the impact of the project doesn't outweigh the need for the project, but I also see folks saying the impact of the project outweighs the usefulness and the value of the project. So I think that that's the healthy dialogue that the legislation is expecting when we develop a multi-year plan. I hesitate to start down the path of saying we have to take this in total, and that's the only option. So
Well,
I want clarification that that's the dialogue as a board, as a committee member. I'm happy to present a funding discussion, not a problem at all. I'm happy to take questions, but I want clarification that that's one of the things we're going to do in this process is talk about how that should go in the discussion.
But I don't think that,
Let me recognize Robert.
Okay.
He gave us that.
Well, in all fairness, I don't know. That's why I've got a lot of questions right now. I'd like clarification on the project, on the growth. That's why I was asking questions there. I'm gonna have questions for Jeff as far, at the end of the day, when it comes to finance, there's certain laws of physics basically in finance. What if we cannot raise the money? What if it is impossible or too exorbitantly expensive? I'm not saying that it is, I'm saying what if? How do we proceed from there?
Right. So,
I think that the process will have to be fluid, and we will have to consider contingencies as such, because it's a very real possibility. But let me say, at the core, I don't think this appointed committee has the authority via this statute to take the place of the Board of Education as an elected body to establish what their needs are. No more than we have collectively the authority to tell the chairman of the county commission, Mr. Akins, this is how you're gonna fund these things and where you're gonna fund them. This is an advisory group, and I don't think that we have a statutory authority to actually usurp either the Board of Commissioners nor the Board of Education. And I think it's our job maybe to look at both sides of the puzzle and to come up with a synthesis that possibly will work. But no, I disagree with Jeff that I don't think this appointed committee is set up to take the place of elected officials that have to make the decision on needs and funding.
Well, I don't think that we're taking the place of it, it's recommending funding options. So is what you're saying that it has to be everything on this list?
No, it's like I told you earlier, if we need to defer, say if the Advanced Tech Center needs to be pushed back for consideration at 2018 bond in conjunction with the community college, you know, that might be appropriate. Or if this committee wanted to say that XYZ school, you know, we feel like the funding mechanism may be best for a bond in 2018 as a partial rendering then. I mean, sure, we can make those recommendations and we can hash that out and then collectively vote to come up with what our committee's recommendation is. But, you know, no, I don't think that we as a group go down the list and say, oh, this is in, this is out, this is in, this is out, no more than we tell the county commissioners, you will fund this with pay-go, you will use the COPS, and you will go for a bond on this. I think we're getting outside of what we're tasked to do.
But it's just an advisory committee if we all.
right, well, I mean, you can make recommendations, but ultimately, it goes back to the elected body. It will go back to the Board of Education. They will decide. So if X amount of money is available, then the BOE will then go back and restack rank their stuff. Is that a reasonable? Right.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if we
Correct.
put a bond
But so
out there and it doesn't
we're
pass.
all dancing around the same thing. It's not that you can't say that we think this or we think that. But at the end of the day, it's what this group thinks. But at the end of the day, the BOE or the BOCC may choose to do something else because they're the elected body that chooses.
Yes, we're saying the same thing.
May I offer a recommendation? Maybe we could allow Mr. Yates and Dr. Webb to work together. I think they have shown a propensity for positive work in the recent past. And before we get our hair standing on the back of our necks, maybe we could give them a whack at it to see if we could come up with something that both sides might be able to at least use as a jumping off spot for the next meeting. I really feel like the two of them can come up with something that will be amenable, because you're not gonna give an inch that you don't feel like you can give, and he's not gonna give an inch like he feels like he can't give, but you have worked together admirably thus far in the process of what we've done. And it has been good work and good things have come from it. So before we all get in a stitch, let's let them try to do a little problem solving and bring it back to the group. I just feel like that may help us all. Chair and chair, please.
Well, I'd like, I think, Robert, we were just saying, you know, a week or so to kind of formulate some questions. I need to kind of process.
Okay, can we have that in a motion and a
Well, and I just want to make sure, so what you're thinking is these two will come together and kind of look at funding and these things together and give us a jumping off point
I
for
would see
discussion next time?
Jeff would be working with Ms. Cotto and looking at the various funding options. And then I would be looking at the calendar and see how we can marry those two, what options he would recommend, what projects that I could push or need to pull for 6 months, a year, whatever we need to fit in, to give more options to this group to recommend.
And that would be sort of a combined document that we could jump off from it.
And in all honesty, the two people best equipped to do that in this room are one.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
I'm
obviously,
sure I
I
understand
understand this code from you, and I would have.
Well, and we'll know a little bit more about the revow by the time we get to that point. We'll have some fresh numbers.
So we're really talking about two things. One is Jeff and Mike getting together to further our discussion without us, so to speak. And then also, any questions we have regarding funding, we'll bring that for Jeff to answer the next meeting as well.
And may I also suggest if it were me going to have those questions, I would like to have them up front and know what they are, as
Absolutely.
opposed to
And it-
being in an open meeting, so.
Thank you, because I meant to say that in all fairness to his work.
Yeah. Well, and,
And I'm just gonna say this for Jeff's protection, I think it's an excellent suggestion. We are in the midst of putting together a budget, we are still, he's had me locked in a room for 3 weeks, doing nothing but meeting with departments and VFDs and everything else on budget, so I will tell you, his plate is overflowing at this
Right.
point in time, but we will do whatever necessary to move this forward.
well,
But
and, yeah, and I
just as
think,
long as we give a little bit of time for him to
I'm
add
sure your
just
plate's
something
full, too.
else to that
Your
plate.
boss is speaking for you, Jeff, you hear?
I just know what hours he's putting in right now, so.
well, and I wanna just, and just a caveat to this, because of what's on their plates, they're gonna give us kind of a jumping off point, but it's gonna be up to this group to develop. So as they may come up with something, it's gonna be us as a body to develop, you know, what this, new options and new plans are. And, you know, we need to think outside of the box, and you had mentioned, you know, build and lease and some other things, so.
This is a busy time of year for both staffs. I mean, incredibly busy. I know what ours is, I can only imagine what yours is, but I appreciate that it is. And I really believe that the two of them can give us reasonable things. And when, you know, sometimes creativity is a great thing, but when it goes, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, you know, and they can tether us to you know, terra firma. And I'll bring that in a form of a motion.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that the two staffs work together to come up with some points that we can start our discussion with next time. And also a second part of that is that we would set a time, chairpersons, to give him the questions, because, so he will have ample time to come up with.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, would you raise your right hand, please? Okay, thank you. Motion stands. So we know our agenda for the next time we meet. Now, the next question becomes, when's are we gonna meet? So, Amy and I feel like this ought to be something we want to talk about at a break. It's something we need to do very quickly. Let's not procrastinate by any means. And let's, and Jeff, and Ms. Coote, I certainly heard what you said.
And Dr. Ellis is
And
right,
Dr.
they
Ellis as
have
well.
the same issues going on, as we do.
I'm wondering,
this time
2
of year.
weeks, would 2 weeks be enough for that?
So the week of the 30th?
That's 2 weeks from today, is April Fool's Day. Wednesday, April 1st.
What about the week of the 6th through 10th?
That's spring break.
That's spring break.
Yeah.
Do it after spring break.
I vote for April Fool's Day or Tax Day.
Either
Two things that are near and dear
You're
to
not
our
gonna be staying up all night
heart.
long on tax day?
Robert's,
Yeah, and a chance to get through all the stuff.
Robert
It
wants
may
to
take a couple
Yeah.
meetings.
Jeff, I was gonna say,
If we went after mid-April, would that give you an opportunity, you and I to meet a couple times between
If you
then?
go on the 15th, I think we can get there.
I was gonna say 15th or the 21st, which would be the following
We were
two.
saying April
I
15th.
think
I'm out of
April
town that
15th
week.
might be a good time, because I think that gives the two staffs enough time with everything else that is going on, and also gives us ample opportunity that it takes more than one meeting to have this discussion, that we can turn it around fairly quickly, because by then, we'll be pretty close to, our budget will not yet have been submitted to our board, but most of the work will have been done.
Okay. So April 15th, and it'll be the school systems.
It'll be our turn to host
Host
it,
it.
and we will, at a location, TBD, how about that? And we will provide sustenance for all again. Are we following the same?
6:30?
I suppose asking, have dinner at 6 p.m., followed by the meeting at 6:30, is that? Is that?
Sounds
okay?
right.
And that's Wednesday, April the 15th at 6 p.m. dinner and the meeting at 6:30.
Like it. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
We adjourn.
Wow.
We didn't do a deadline for Jeff and questions, sorry.
Oh, a deadline.
It's when people are to get questions to Jeff. Sorry, I just want to make sure we don't forget that piece, because I hate for him to get questions on April 14th.
When could you, a week before the meeting, would that work, Would that be, give you enough
I
time?
prefer a little bit more than.
How about April 1st?
Yeah, that's what I was
April
thinking, April
1st.
first.
Depending upon the complexity, so, I don't know what the questions are gonna be, so I can't tell you how much there's gonna be answered.
Actually,
Did everyone hear that?
Week. How about April 25th? They're gonna have,
You mean March 25th?
yeah, whatever.
March 25th?
Why don't we go for a week, because they're gonna need time to compile the answers to the questions, and then get together and talk.
Let's
What are
say,
you
Sooner
proposing,
than
Ron?
April first?
I'm-
What day do you think?
I'm saying let's give it the working group a week to email questions to Dr. Webb or Mr. Yates.
Can everybody do that within a week?
yeah,
Sure.
that's fair.
I mean, this is when it's fresh in your mind.
The sooner we email them, the fresher in our minds it will
Yeah.
be to get accurate questions.
Yeah.
The school teacher in me tells you the longer you wait, the less you will do.
And then our direction would be to try to tie your questions into a
Jumping off
launching
point.
point for us for discussion,
Should
correct?
we, say
Sure.
that if you're sending a question, send it to both of them, so you'll both have a feel for what's being asked in case it
That's a good point.
crosses lines and, I mean,
Yep, that works.
does that make
Yeah,
sense?
and we can coordinate if we need answers. And I'd ask, if you're gonna ask a question attached to a document, cite where your question, if you're referring to something, cite where you're
What
referring
page?
to it.
What
because
page it is and the proper
That is
name
very
for it.
helpful.
Highlight it on the document when you
I've
press
got it
it
on
on,
my
right?
desktop. I'm
There
not
goes that
forgetting
English
right
teacher
now.
again.
Because some number somewhere is hard for us to find.
Let me just make sure we're all on the same. Okay, the nearest date coming, the soonest, March the 26th, all questions to Jeff and Mike. Then we would meet on the 15th, dinner at 6, meeting 6:30 at a UPCS site.
That's what I have.
Beautiful thing.
Okay.
Adjourn this meeting, would you?
Hey,
We are adjourned.
call the question. I've already
Jared, quick, call the question.
It's been called.
I've already seconded.
It's been seconded. It's been voted on.
Hey,
Hey, Frank.